Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem of my Blitz game number 310. I was white here, and I kicked off with d4. And after knight f6, c4, and c5. This is usually an introduction to the Benoni, and the main move here is d5, but it's also an introduction to the Benko Gambit. These are related opening systems, I guess. Now you can decline the invitation to the Benoni or the Benko by playing knight f3 here, but the main move is just go ahead and play into it. The Benoni is a pretty good opening for white, tough to play for black, because white gets a big space advantage. So e6 would be the normal way of going into a Benoni. Looks like g6 could also be played here. Maybe even I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong. It looks like e6 is the next most popular move here. I'm a little bit surprised at that. Yeah, I would expect d6 and g6 and then later e6 to undermine the center. That's interesting. You can play e6 right away. I guess black is not afraid of you pushing the pawn to to d6. That always looks a little bit annoying to me. But anyway, that's not how the game was played. Black here chose to play Benko Gambit, so this is a much more aggressive way to play this opening. The Benko Gambit is not a super tactical gambit, but it gives black long-term pressure against the queen side here. He fianchettos his bishop, and white's pawn structure is a bit destroyed here. So it's normal to take. Once again, you can play knight f3, it looks like, and there is some crazy line with knight c3 here, I think, but yeah, maybe not in this position. I don't know. I thought I saw Chess Explained playing knight c3 in that position. Knight f3 is a way of declining the gambit, but you can take, and then he plays a6 to immediately turn it into a gambit. Oh, here's where knight c3 is playable. Interesting idea. I don't know how to play that way. But the system I play, you see it's the second choice here, it's b6. The most popular move is to take. Again, you take, and then black takes back usually with the bishop, and then he gets this diagonal here, and it makes it hard for you to develop your king side. If you push this pawn forward, he can just exchange off this bishop, and and then you're not castling. So it's kind of an annoying way. It's an annoying thing to deal with. So I avoid all that. And you know, you get a pawn, but black gets a lot of pressure on the queen side. So I avoid all that by playing the pawn forward to b6. And now black can let the pawn sit there for a while, but eventually he's going to round it up. And so it's not a gambit anymore. So you've effectively you've declined the gambit. But because you haven't taken this pawn, black doesn't get this immediate pressure on the A file that he gets in some other lines. So you just have to worry about one file to cover, which is this B file and the B pawn. And he is going to triangulate on the B pawn here with bishop on G7 and the queen on the B file. Maybe the rook will come to the B file too. Getting a lot of pressure on this B2 square. So you have to be prepared for that, but it takes time. And in the meantime, just develop your knight here to support E4. And then d6 and e4. So you see we're following the main line, and g6 now getting ready to fianchetto the bishop, and now knight f3 just continuing to develop. And now this is a rare move, so this my opponent maybe is playing a sideline here that he's familiar with. Normally just going ahead with bishop g7 is the logical way to play. But you see get some of the same ideas here. One thing that this pin does is a lot of times this knight wants to come over here to c4, and the pin stops that. And after I play bishop e2, he just trades off that knight, so that knight never gets to c4, which is interesting. I mean, it takes me out of the normal channels for this opening. It looks like, however, I could have gotten an advantage right here by playing the move queen a4 check. Didn't even think about this at all in the game, but it gets away out of the pin with tempo. So after the king moves, or the bishop, well, if the bishop comes back, there's no more pin. If the knight comes to, let's put the move on, sorry. If the knight comes to d2, then if the knight comes to d7 to block the check, then this knight can just be moved away, and so you save the knight and get it to a good square here on c4. So, and if he blocks with the bishop, which is the recommended move by the chess engine, then the queen can drop back here. And once again, there's no pin on this knight. If he tries to pin it again, you can just move it away. So this is a way to keep your pieces free. So that queen a4 check is a very interesting idea. It's also interesting that the white is not afraid of trading queens in this position. The material is even. Both sides have the bishop pair, but white has a little more space and maybe easier development. So the queen trade, I guess, is worthwhile here. And apparently the pawn weakness on b3 is not going to be an issue because the engine is recommending that black decline the queen trade. Okay, so let's go back to the game. So queen a4 check was not played. I played instead bishop e2, and we're out of the book now. He just took off my knight. So I no longer am getting this knight to c4 idea, so I'm sort of on my own improvising. Black develops normally, getting this pressure on the b file that I talked about, and the b2 square in particular. I continue with queen c2 defending and preparing to develop my bishop and my rook. Let's see, he goes knight b d7, so some normal developing moves like castle, and he goes castle. I go rook b1. So I'm getting all of my pieces off of this diagonal. This is a common tactic when black has a strong bishop here and you don't have any immediate way to trade it off. You can sometimes deal with it just by just by emptying this diagonal so that it's a strong bishop, but it's not hitting on any targets if you're successful. So step by step, you sort of unwind from that diagonal. Rook f to b8, so more pressure on the b file, and now b3. So now everything is clear off the diagonal except this knight. I just have to find a good square for the knight and I'll be home free. He goes ahead with a5, and maybe I should be thinking about knight a4 here already. But I wanted to develop my bishop and get it out. Bishop g5 was also a possibility. But I was curious to see if he would go after the bishop with the knight. Instead he played queen to a6, maybe with the idea of putting the rooks in front of the queen. If he can get his rooks going on the b file and put the queen behind him, sometimes there's ideas of sacrificing or getting the knight over here too, maybe is the idea. Queen is evacuating a square the knight could use. So I put my rook here. I am thinking of trying to get an advantage in an attack by pushing through the center. This doesn't really happen in the game. It may not be a plan that actually works in this particular position. So he's unveiling his bishop, retreating his knight, but unveiling his bishop along this diagonal. I go bishop to e2, kicking his queen. Yeah, I kept trying to calculate this push on from e4 to e5, and it just doesn't work in any of these cases. So he drops his queen back to b7, and now I play knight a4. So I'm hoping to get my knight active over here on the queen side. He goes knight b6, and maybe I should just take it. No, actually the engine likes my move, knight b2. So I'm still keeping some edge. It's interesting. The chess engine likes white's position here, so I managed to hold my own at least against this higher rated player so far. Not a winning advantage. This is just, your typical, or maybe slightly better than typical opening advantage. Okay, knight c7 and knight c4. Knight c4 is when I give away a lot of my advantage. The engine doesn't like that at all. So let's think. What is it recommending here? Rook e to c1, okay, is one idea. Bishop to d2, bringing this bishop back and maybe putting pressure on the queen side. So yeah, it's interesting. I guess all the action is on the queen side. With the knight coming to c4, the engine is saying black can get a good game by knight b5. So let's take a look at this. Knight b5. He didn't play this. The thing is, my knight on c4 has closed off this diagonal of the bishop, so this move was not possible before. And now it is. So now I can take the knight here, or I could play bishop to d2. But now his knight can come into d4. That's the point here, is this maneuver of the knight to the d4 square. It's a really strong knight there, and if all else fails, like if I get too much pressure on the knight, he can at least exchange it for this bishop here. But it's just going to sit there and be a dominating force. So he missed this chance, and instead he traded immediately. And then right here, the engine much prefers taking with the pawn. I really was thinking about this. I didn't think about that idea of the knight c4, c5 to d4. That was interesting. But I did think about this pawn take, and I really wasn't sure. Now, if I would take with a pawn, it is a tempo on the queen. The queen has to get out of the way. And I was thinking an exchange of rooks would follow, but I don't have to exchange rooks. And then it says bishop to g5, poking around on these weak squares here and leaving the center kind of locked up. It's an interesting way to play. You always have to be careful in these positions for a bishop coming here and hitting on this diagonal towards the king. So, you always want to avoid moves like f4 and queen f2 and getting skewered there. That's happened to me before. Something to watch out in these positions. So I guess taking with the pawn is good. I was thinking maybe keeping a little more imbalance in the position with these different pawn structures. But this bishop here is not doing a whole lot. So maybe it's better to put a pawn there and leave the bishop free to roam on some of these other diagonals. Anyway, this is how it was played. And now the game is about even. He continues knight a6. Oh, it doesn't like knight a6, because finally I get to push e5 here, and I do. So after a couple of inaccurate moves, I guess I retain the advantage that I had. e5, knight b4 coming in here, hitting my queen. And I saw that happening, and I figured my queen could just step aside, putting more defense on the, not that line, putting defense on the d-pawn, because the queen and the knight are also coordinating to attack it, and also maintaining support of the e-pawn here. Plays queen to b6. Okay, inching up with the queen, defending the d6 square. That's right, I was threatening to take there. So h4 is the recommended move here. That's interesting. I played a3, kicking the knight. It's not too bad. Knight drops back to a6, pretty much the only move, and now I took. Okay, still keeping an advantage. E takes. Thought opening up this file for the rook would be good. And then rook e7. Yeah, the engine is not impressed with rook e7. Usually putting a piece on the 7th rank, well, it keeps an advantage, so can't say I'm playing badly here, but he can start harassing it with bishop f6. I guess the point is I don't get to maintain the rook on the d file because he can challenge it with his rook, and he does. And there's nowhere for this rook to go, so I've just got to trade it off. So that rook excursion did not really amount to anything. So it's not so much about putting a piece on the 7th rank as it is if you can really maintain it there. So now black, even though white still has the advantage, black is pretty solid here. Seems well defended. I try to maneuver a little bit with queen to d3. I'm getting on a light square, hitting the knight again. Knight drops back to b8. And rook e1, getting another rook on the open file. Knight d7. And I would like to threaten the pawn here. If I play the move h4, probably a mistake. I was kind of running out of ideas at this point, I think. And as the clock ticks down, you want to try and do something. I was just wondering, how am I ever going to take advantage of his king side? It seems so solid here. So I thought weakening it with h4, h5. But I get tied up after move h4. So the engine says the way to keep an advantage here is bishop to b5. Ah, this is kind of a nice idea. I was a little bit worried about this because the bishop maybe could be chased away, although it's going to take quite a few moves. And if the bishop was chased away, this pawn would become a weakness. But, well, he can try bishop to e5 here. Bishop g5. f6. Bishop back to d2. f5. Queen to c4. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot going on. It looks like I can just keep this bishop here. And this bishop otherwise is not doing a whole lot. It was just sitting here on c4, just looking like a big pawn. So it's not the most effective use of that piece. So if you, one rule in chess, if you're at a loss for a move, one way of generating an idea for moves is to look around at all your pieces, figure out what piece is your worst piece, and find a way to improve it. So that would have been an idea to use here. Instead I played h4, and now h4, well actually it's just a silly move because he can take it. So I guess I played well enough. He wasn't expecting a blunder like that because he didn't take my pawn. He played something else. He played knight e5, and this gives me a moment to save my pawn. I come over here, hold on to the pawn. The engine is saying queen c2, holding on to the bishop. And is there a reason why he can't take the pawn here? Let's check this out. If he takes the pawn now, and I'll take on e5 and get this pawn. Okay, so that would have been maybe a better way to play that. I just came over here with queen g3, defending the pawn, and now he can immediately undermine my situation with a4. And I was expecting this after I played queen g3. I was saying, oh my gosh, he can play a4 there, and this bishop is loose now. It's only defended by a pawn. And the queen is sort of overworked, looking this way and looking this way, trying to hold on to everything. So, but he didn't play that, so I guess my opponent was having a bit of an off day. So rook e8 was played, and I go rook e2. I don't want to fall victim to this check. Knight f6 check would have picked up the rook there, but now the rook is defended. He goes queen d8, and not the best move. So now I can push on with h5. Okay, well, still staying within the range of even. He finally takes my bishop, and I have to take his rook first because my rook is hanging, but I can take there with check, and then I can take the knight. And we get into an endgame fairly soon here. Queen e1 check. Thought I was doing okay along here. The material's still even. I can't take my pawn because it's pinned, and at some point I'll be able to soften up this king side a bit. And I have maybe a slight edge because he's got these pawns on dark squares here that I can attack, whereas my pawns are on light squares and they're immune to his bishop. But he defends with bishop e5. And so after an exchange, hg, hg, I didn't see anything better than taking the bishop. And yeah, that's the recommended move. He takes back. But now taking back with the pawn was a bit of a mistake. And now I have, I was thinking, well, I have prospects for the endgame. I have this passed pawn. And if you look at the engine, it's immediately recommending the immediate d6. So passed pawns must be pushed. So I played queen e3 instead. And went into the pure pawn endgame, which I also thought was favorable to me. But he plays f5 immediately. And now, was that the best move, f5? Yeah, okay, so this was a favorable pawn ending. You'll see the evaluation changed right after the trade of queens. He's got it, I mean, yeah. So trading queens was actually a mistake, and I should win this pawn endgame. So it's pretty instructive to see how to win it. So f5 or king g7, f5 is what he played, so let's just look at this line. I should immediately challenge this with e4. And let's see how it would go. Also a4, blocking it up. Let's look at e4 first. So he could take or he could push. I thought he would just push and try and keep me locked out. But the problem with that is my king can now come up. And I can go this way, king to h5. And I guess he can't defend all his pawns. This king needs to hang around here to keep an eye out on these squares to prevent d6 from becoming a queen. He needs to hold on to this pawn, which I'm attacking. And he has no moves, yeah. So I guess he's in Zugzwang. If he pushes this pawn, I'll take it. If he pushes this pawn, I'll take it. And now I've got a winning endgame. So let's see, is there any way to play this for black after e4? It says black could play a4, okay. And now the king comes forward. This king comes forward. It takes. I don't understand why taking is an idea here. problem with taking... Oh, I take. It's my move. When his king comes forward, I take. He takes back. And then king h4, coming around the side. Well, this is very dangerous looking, right? His king goes here, and now he's got a pass pawn too, right? King h5. Let's see how this goes. e4. How am I going to stop this pawn? King h4. Okay, I stay on the square of the pawn. And he has to stay on the square of my pawn. But I can play the move. Oh, it's his turn. He can play the move f4. I go king g4. He goes king e5, defending. And now d6. So somehow that big advantage I had. Okay, no, it's still just a one pawn advantage. Aha, that happens sometimes if you're following through a line with the engine. It changes its mind. So e4, king h4, f4, king g4. Okay, now it sees a win again. King e5. And now I push on with d6. You use the pawn to distract the king. He has to take it. And then you can take these pawns. And he can't get back to defend even. His king can't go to this square or this square. So he's going to lose both of those pawns. And now with the outside pass pawn, this is an easy win. You push this one forward. When he takes it, you can gobble up both of those pawns and win. So let's go back to this position here. I played king g3 here. I think king g3 maintains an advantage too. But the most precise way to play, I think, is to immediately challenge those pawns with e4. And it looks dangerous somehow. But if he takes, he can't get up in time to defend this pawn. And it's a little bit hard for black to hold on to all those pawns here. He's going to run out of moves. This is a nice trick. If you go here, then he can push here, and your king has to go back. But you can still go forward with d6. Yeah, so it's still winning. But as a little finesse, you can play this pawn forward here first. And he's really out of moves. He can't push this one forward. You'll just block it. And when his king moves, you get to take the e pawn. So that's just winning. So this move e4 is a real key move in this position. So I played king g3, still with a chance to win. He comes forward, and now once again I need to play e4. I play king f3, still with winning chances. King f7, g4. So g4, which is the move, you know, at some point you gotta try and bust up your opponent's pawns, and it's still not clear to me why you know, e4 is winning and g4 is a draw. So, but what happened after g4? I played g4. He just plays f4. Okay, and he plays this well now. He maintains the draw, and I take. He takes. And then it's my turn, and I come forward, he comes forward. So that's how the game continued. If we back up to this position where I played g4 here. If I play e4 instead, and he plays the same way, he plays with f4. And then I play here. That's a draw. Okay. So the winning idea is not to push the g-pawn, but to come forward with the king. And say his king comes forward to defend things. I'll push this pawn to take away moves. He goes there. Then I play d6. So it's this d6 idea, and the king coming forward to attack his pawns on the king side. So that combination, and leaving this g-pawn behind. And that's the way to win this position. So pretty instructive endgame, I think. So anyway, after g4, it's now a draw, and the game just continued. He pushed, and we got this exchange in. And now, after a little bit of maneuvering, it locks up, in this position, but there's no way to make progress. His king can't come forward and attack my pawns because the d-pawn runs, and at the same time my king can't come forward either because he's got a pawn that runs. So it's the dueling pawns ensure a draw, dueling protected pawns. So that's how the game ended, in a draw. I thought that was pretty interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you again soon. Bye.